Hello, PyOhio. My name is Jeff Lehman, and welcome to my talk, Hamming It Up, using Python and ham radio. First of all, let's delve into a little bit about me. I have been an SQL developer for 20 plus years. I hold a bachelor's in data management and a master's in software engineering. I work for R&L Carriers on the business intelligence and architectural solutions team as a SQL developer. I have been a licensed ham radio operator for 22 years. My call sign is N8ACL. That's November 8 Alpha Charlie Lima. I have other interests as well outside of, ham radio. So I like to do software development. I enjoy gaming. I enjoy going fishing and camping, and I enjoy traveling. Since this is a 15-minute-ish talk, let's go over some of our goals here. I do want to touch on a brief background of what ham radio is. I want to touch on the methods of how I use Python to fill holes in my ham radio experience. I do want to present some examples of how others have used Pythons in their ham radio experiences. And I do want to take a moment to mention that all the slides, bibliography, links, and all that stuff will be in this GitHub repo if you want to go back and reference it at another time. Okay. So let's start with what is ham radio. In 1901, Marconi made the first transatlantic transmission, and this was a voice transmission. This wasn't just like Morse code or spark gap or things like that. This was the first voice transmission across the Atlantic. About 11 years later, Congress approved the Radio Act of 1912, and in it, this is what lays out the amateur radio service and required operators to be licensed. Prior to this, anyone could build a spark gap generator or a telegraph and talk on any of the frequencies. After this, you needed to be licensed. What is ham radio? Ham radio is a form of communication that allows for two-way communication between two or more licensed individuals on some designated frequencies. Ham radio is both a hobby and a service. Some people would argue it is just a service. It is both a hobby and a service. Within ham radio, there are so many aspects to it. It's been said that ham radio really is a hobby of hobbies. There are so many different things that you can get involved in that you could really just specialize in, that really just you could make a hobby within the hobby. Today, we don't use spark gap generators, obviously. We still do use telegraph keys for Morse code, but we use a lot of other methods now to communicate with each other. We use simplex, which is radio to radio, like walkie-talkies. We use repeaters, just like the police and fire departments. We can talk through a repeater and it will amplify our signal to a much wider area. Computers have been incorporated over the years. Things like the Automatic Position Reporting System, or APRS. This plots our location via the radio on computer screens. We can use packet radio. Packet radio connects two or more computers together and allows you to send files, send text, things like that via radio-connected modems. We use a lot of digital modes now. A lot of these same digital modes are ones that you might be familiar with from commercial uses, like DMR, like P25. Yaesu, the Yaesu Corporation, has their own version called Yaesu System Fusion. We use the internet as a backbone for a lot of these. For example, DMR, P25, and All-Star-Link all use the internet as a backbone to link repeaters and users together to let people talk across really the world just from a handheld. So now let's delve into how have I used Python and ham radio? What are some of the things that I've looked for to enhance my ham radio experience? First of all, I use Python to interact with a lot of APIs online. For example, I wrote a Hammy, or what I call the Hammy Discord bot. This is a bot that will sit in ham radio Discord servers or ham radio themed Discord servers and allow its users from any text channel to do an online call sign lookup. You can tell it, hey, I want to look up N8ACL. It will go out and pull all the information about me and display it right there in Discord for you, so you don't even have to leave the application. I wrote a lot of Discord bots for radio control. For example, I have one that will allow me to control my All-Star Link system. I can type some commands into Discord, and the bot will listen for those commands and then reach out to my All-Star system and connect my node to other nodes and let me talk across the internet that way. I've also used it to interact with APIs for APRS station lookups. This includes messaging and other notifications. What this application will do is it will listen to an API from one of the web-based APRS systems, and if whatever call sign you're wanting to listen for comes across the APRS information system, it will send a notification to a number of different social media services, Mattermost, Discord, Slack. You used to go to Twitter, Pushover, things like that. That way you can get a notification that, say, for example, a friend of yours is on the move and where they're located at and what the weather is like at their location, things like that. Other things I've used Python for. Pulling data off of data streams. Again, the APRS information system, or APRS-IS. This is a data stream that is on the internet that allows what are called RFI gates to send the data that they hear to the internet and then share it to multiple websites, other users of the APRS-IS, things like that. What I can do then is I can pull data directly from that backbone and parse that data out and then use it for various things. For example, in my APRS notify script that you just saw, that's what I use to send the notifications with. I can also put messages onto the APRS-IS system so that I could, for example, from Discord or Python itself, I can send a message to an RF station out driving around and things like that, and we can communicate back and forth that way using that. I use for DMR, the Brandmeister DMR network has an API that has a continuous stream of data of stations that were last heard on the DMR network. I can tap that data stream and listen for specific call signs, specific areas, things like that. And I can pull that data in and send it to things like MQTT, SQL Server, use it for notifications on Discord if I want to. Once I have it on MQTT or an MQTT broker, I'm then able to use that to send to other various endpoints and use the data how I need and how I want. An example of this is in one of my GitHub repos here. I do want to note that the logic behind listening for these call signs was actually developed by a gentleman by the name of Michael Clements. He's a ham out of Germany. I forked his original work and modified it so that I can put the data directly on an MQTT broker to allow me to use it in multiple places, and I know it's going to be the same data in all of those endpoints. I use Python to save a lot of data for ham radio to various databases. I have set up some ETL processes that allow me to pull in data from various sources, typically again by APIs, transform and then load that data into tables in SQL Server. That way I can then use that data to pull against for call sign lookups if I need to do analytics on, how many stations were last heard over a certain period of time. APRS information, if I want to keep local APRS information, I can store that all into databases. I use Python to pull all that information in on a nightly basis and update that data for me in my databases. That way I have a local copy of it on my network and can use it however I need to. Some examples of what I pull in. I reach out and I pull in the DMR IDs for all DMR users, or ham radio DMR users. Let me rephrase that. I pull in a list of the All-Star Link node directory so I can search for quickly any kind of nodes that are on the All-Star Link network. I pull in talk groups from different DMR networks, the TGIF network, the Brandmeister DMR network. I pull those all into data tables. That way I can do lookups against those talk groups to find, say I see a talk group pop up, I can figure out its name and not have to go to the internet to find it. I also still store local things as well. For example, I store a directory of local RF net information. I kind of started this during COVID. And what this would do is that this was used to send notifications to like Twitter and Mastodon of local nets that were going on at specific times. That way, during COVID, hams who were basically in isolation would know, okay, now is a good time to get on the radio because I know I'm going to find people on this specific frequency and I'm going to be able to talk to them and be able to interact with people. I've kind of kept up that directory post-COVID because it is a good information source for other things, and I do tap that data source for other things. So I have that database set up as well. This basically, by setting up these databases and setting up these detailed processes, allow me to bring the data in and not have to constantly go outside of my network here at home to grab data off of APIs. It speeds up getting that data to me. Now, how have some others used Python in ham radio? Again, Michael Clemens created what he calls his QRZ logger. QRZ.com is a call sign lookup website. However, they have logbook functionality. He created a program in Python that interacts with their logbook, which is basically a list of contacts that a ham radio operator has made. He wrote a Python script that goes out and interacts with that logbook. That way you can do logging from the command line via Python to your logbook, and then it is updated and anybody can go to your QRZ page and see this data. Another group of users have created what's called Analog Reflector. This is written entirely in Python, and it's a web-based client that allows you to interact with multiple digital modes. This includes things like DMR, Yaesu System Fusion, P25, All-Star Link. And this allows you to interact from your phone, your computer, tablets, things like that. It's all written completely in Python, and they are keeping it actually well updated with that. So this kind of filled a hole for people who don't have the ability to, get a radio or things like that, or they're away from their house and they don't want to carry a radio with them. They can carry their phone, get back in, and be able to talk online or talk via the internet to other radio users. Again, going back to that radio linking. Again, I know this is a brief summary of this. 15 minutes is not a long time. Maybe in a future talk, I'll be able to get a little bit more in depth. But like I said, I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the topics of what we've used Python for in ham radio. If you have any questions, if you want more information, things like that, here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out. I will get back with you as soon as I am capable. Of course, life, work, and family all come first, but I will get back with you. And again, I'll have all this information up in that GitHub repo I had earlier in the slideshow. But thank you for attending the talk. Hopefully you got a little something out of it, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks.